So I broke down and grew a C-Rex on the Apex Killers server. I grew a female Elder class C-Rex, and I've been playing it the last few days. That's this Obnoxious thing you see on the screen here, fighting this other Obnoxious thing in this dinosaur game. Thanks for clicking on the video, guys. This is Whiskey, of course, and welcome back to Path of Titans. In this video, you guessed it, I'm going to be talking about the C-Rex. Now, you might have seen my Allosaurus video, where at the very beginning of the video, I'm fighting a C-Rex, and I said in that video that I was thankful that George had removed it from Apex Killers. Well, of course, as luck would have it, he added it back that same day I dropped the video. So it was kind of bad timing, but that's what happened. And so I thought, you know, this thing came back. The female C-Rex is a Elder class C-Rex, so it's got 8,000 combat weight and 1,000 health, and it's a solo playable. So I wanted to try it out. Mainly, I wanted to try it out to figure out what its weaknesses were so I could go kill them, because I really find them annoying when I see these fluorescent gigantic T-Rexes like this one right here out in the plains. There's something about it that annoys me. I don't know exactly what it is, because there's already dragons and spear crests and other griffins and other fantasy creatures, but this one's just, it really stands out. Fire breathing and all the crazy abilities that it has. I really just don't find it a good fit, really, in the server. So I really wanted to see, you know, what its weaknesses were, so that I could figure out a way to go and fight them and get on something that would be a good counter to them and fight them. Now, I hear spear crests are a pretty good counter to them, which makes sense because the spear crest is very tough, and it does have the bite that will do piercing damage to them. So I might consider that. But ironically, when I was playing it, I found myself having a ton of fun with it. I was really enjoying myself on the C-Rex. And one of the main reasons is because the greatest threat to a C-Rex is really another C-Rex. So I was just, you know, putting on a build to fight other C-Rexes, and anytime I saw them, I was going and trying to kill them. So it worked out because I was able to actually accomplish the goal that I set out to do, which was to kill as many C-Rexes as I could. I'm gathering all their trophies and stacking up the C-Rex trophies in my home cave, and I'm going to put them out on a nest at some point. But I also didn't expect it, but I started having an amazing time, and I was having just a lot of fun. So I couldn't put it down. It was like addicting. The only time when I log on, I just want to play a C-Rex now. So I found that kind of funny and ironic. Really, you know, people say that they're OP, and I understand why, because they are just this huge monstrosity, and they do a lot of damage, and they're very tanky, and they have all these abilities. But the main downfall to these things is that they're very slow. You're not going to be running down anything. Like this Spino, if you wanted to, could just run away and doesn't have to fight me. So really, you're only fighting players that want to fight you. You know, you're not running things down with the C-Rex, and the stuff that you can run down can kill you pretty easily. You know, big sauropods, for example. So it's not really OP. As powerful as it is, that's its weakness, is that it's slow. You have to play it very defensively. So it's kind of cool because you can just, what I do is I walk around and I just, you know, roar, and I invite things to come try to fight me, and then I'll either have a good fight, or if it's something I don't want to fight, I can just simply swim away. You can submerge and be fully aquatic and just swim away. So the Spino, you know, I got lucky. The Spino wanted to fight me. I got that fight. It was pretty easy. I mean, a single Spino is not really a good match for a C-Rex. Now, two Spinos could be. Two Spearcrests also could be a very good match for a C-Rex. But the Spearcrests you can get away from. The Spinos you might not be able to get away from. So a couple of Spinos might be a really good way to kill the C-Rexes and use to hunt C-Rexes. So I'd fought other C-Rexes, I fought Gigas, I fought the Spinos, Dinos, and I was looking for a challenge, and I bumped into this Kamara. So I wanted to try this. So his tail wasn't doing too much damage, so I figure I'll stay behind him and just try to tail ride him if possible. I can see him scarring up already, so I know this is going actually much better than I thought it was. I don't know why he went to the water, because I'm semi-aquatic, but maybe he just didn't know that. And that is another advantage that you have on these, is a lot of people don't know that they're semi-aquatic. So let's get into the builds and all these different abilities, and I'll talk about the build that I like the most. We have got all these different bites. Got Sparkler, a hot bite with low damage, stacks a body heating debuff on your target that decreases their water recovery rate. Each bite takes a small amount of stamina and water from your opponent. Now that bite has a fairly low cooldown, and you can alternate it with your normal bite. So that's a good one to do, just alternate and spam both bites. And it will take some stamina from your opponent, which can be very helpful. And then it does take oxygen, which also could be helpful. But the stamina, I mean not oxygen, water, it'll drain their thirst, make them thirsty. So both of those things can be pretty helpful in a fight. I think the stamina drain is actually a little better, and it does a little bit of damage too. So while your normal bite's cooling off, it's a good alternate to have. Secondly is the shoe fly. I like this one when I hang around near a shoreline, because it does knockback. It does pretty good knockback. It'll knock back sub-apexes, mid-tiers, and low tiers right on into the water. And then you can also alternate that with the normal bite. And the smaller stuff will get knocked back pretty far. And so you can just keep knocking them out into the middle of the river or the lake or the ocean, and then kill them out there. So it's a good handy tool, kind of situational bite that you can use. Septic Bite's another good one. Low damage, but it does venom and bleed. And then it has an effect that raises the sprinting stamina cost of the target. Also applies Haughty to wet targets, increasing their hunger depletion rate by 25% and incoming bleed rate and incoming venom rate. O2 Eater, I haven't used that one yet, but that one I would imagine you just use when you want to play a full semi-aquatic build with the C-Rex. Face Tank is a good option for fighting other C-Rexes. Just take 30% reduced damage from hits to your head, neck, and chest. Anything big that you're just going to probably face tank, if you could swap it out to that, then that's a good option. And then, of course, you got the bite, causes high damage and also increases incoming damage by 0.1% on any hunkered enemy, stackable up to 5 times. So another handy little kind of thing that goes along with the regular bite. But that is your primary spammable bite. And then Adrenaline Bite causes low damage and gives your target a boost to energy, causing higher sprinting stamina drain, lower turn radius, but increasing overall sprinting speed. So it's kind of a trade-off there. And then stacks up to 4 times. And then the 5th stack will cause your target's heart to swell, decreasing movement speed and bursting your blood vessels, causing bleed. So another interesting bite to use. I think I normally am going to be walking around with Face Tank, and then a combination of these 3 depending on the situation: Sparkler, Shoe Fly, and Septic Bite. Those are, I think, the 3 most useful for all different situations, and then Face Tank for the bigger, slower enemies. A lot of abilities on this thing. It's kind of ridiculous, but there's tons of options here. The Ronin's a good choice for your sense. because that gives you trot speed, sprinting stamina cost, turn radius, and armor increased. Attack damage decreased, and then you can't be in a group to use it. So your attack damage is decreased. It doesn't say by how much, but it does give you armor. I think if you're going to be fighting Apexes or Sub-Titans, especially other C-Rexes, you probably want to use Lone Hunter. But this is a good option for Karks and the smaller stuff that can outturn you. The rest of these I don't think make sense because it's just too many negatives. Like the rocket engine valve increases acceleration and stamina recovery, but then you're decreasing your armor and health. Marathon Man decreases sprinting stamina cost and attack damage. So, I don't think that's a good trade-off. Glass Glutton, food consumption rate, hunger depletion rate, and attack damage increased. Max health and sprinting stamina cost decreased. So again, anytime you're decreasing your max health, just don't think it's a good option. Battle hardened, sprinting stamina cost, turning radius, and max health is increased, but your trotting speed and your cooldown duration is decreased. And you must be in a group to use it. Now that could be a good choice. I just don't like the fact that the cooldowns are decreased because your bite already kind of has a delay in it, and you really want to maximize DPS, I think, when you're in fights with this guy. But it could be an option. And then there's APAC, sprinting stamina cost, and attack damage decreased. Again, decreasing attack damage I don't like, but at max stamina is increased. So I guess if you're going to be running stuff down, Buff Butt is pretty good. It reduces 30% chance or reduced damage from your tail. So you could use that in addition to the leg one that makes you take less damage on your legs, and then face tank, and you'll be very robust with that. Menacing Monster, this is kind of a complicated one, but you can use that. You use it with Septic Bite, Adrenaline Bite, and Sparkler to apply a thing called Menacing Monster to yourself. Up to 100% increased stamina recovery and 25% boost to trot speed, but a 35% increase to sprint stamina cost and a 0.05% armor reduction. Menacing Monster stamina recovery buff will quickly disappear if it's raining or if you're wet. So, stamina recovery, I guess, is pretty good. Trot speed is good, but 35% increase to sprint stamina cost and armor reduction, I don't know. I don't think that one makes too much sense. So that's all those different senses. You got a bunch of different metabolisms here. You can pretty much eat anything in the game depending on what you choose. And then for your hide, slick scales. If you know you're going to go up against a mob boss, I guess you could throw that on, but it's not something that I would want to trade off for the other options. Refreshing Presence, where if you're resting or sleeping, it'll increase group members' stamina recovery rate, poison, venom, toxin, paralysis, and bleed healing rate. I guess if you are suffering from some of those, you can switch over to that when you're healing up. Resilient Scales, I think, is the standard. That's the one I run most of the time because these C-Rexes have horrible bleed heal. Skin Straw is interesting. You can, if you're going to do a full semi-aquatic C-Rex, you can use that just to get water while you're just swimming around like a Sarco. You don't ever have to drink as long as you just go swim in the water. Lightweight Scales will give you speed, but it decreases your turn speed by 15%. I think that's horrible. I would never use that one. JPOG, your attack is heavily decreased. So right off the bat, I don't like that. But stamina sprint cost is also heavily decreased. Acceleration is increased. So you get a little bit of acceleration, you get some armor and health. So if you want, the biggest problem with this is it doesn't tell you by how much. But if you want some acceleration, armor, and health at the cost of attack damage, then I guess that's great. Maybe if you're fighting smaller stuff, that would be good. But I just don't think that one makes sense for most situations. Gluttonous Tyrant can be a good option because you do get 5% increase to your attack damage, and then increases max food and thirst by 15%. Food consumption and hunger depletion is increased by 10%. But then the kicker is your health is decreased by 5%. So if you want to swap out attack for health, this might be a good one to use in conjunction with Lone Hunter, because the Lone Hunter is going to boost your attack damage by 10%. And then you could put this one on, which only reduces it by 5%. So you still have 5% increased attack damage, but now you're also getting a little more health. So it could be a good trade-off. I just don't think that you want to use that to get. I don't think you want to give up resilient scales for that, because if you get attacked by bleeders, which this is on the Apex Killers server, and like most things that you're going to fight do bleed. So I don't think it's a good trade-off. And then Big Fish is the other one I use, especially like in between fights. After I get done with a fight, I'll swap to this, and then just if you just swim in the water, you get swim speed and swim turning speed, which is nice. But the real nice thing is that the health recovery rate and the health recovery multiplier is by 20% when you're swimming. So even if you're just kind of just swimming in circles, you can heal faster. So you can do that after battles or in between battles at the combat timer. If you know you're going to be fighting something that's not a bleeder, you can fight by the water and then just go in the water when the combat timer's off and get your health back, and then go back off for another round of fighting. So that's a good option too. So those are the two that I use most, is resilient scales and then Big Fish. And then a whole ton of leg slots. You got 2 that you can put on all the time. And I mean, you got Trample. This one's good for to put on for fighting low tier stuff and mid tier stuff. It has a bit of a knockback, which kind of like stuns them and keeps them in place so you can bite them. Tough Toes, that's the good one that you could use with. That's the one I was talking about. You could use that with Buff Butt, just to be totally fortified and take a lot less damage. Strong Legs is really good to reduce incoming knockback. Stomp is really good for the ankle biters and the smaller stuff that wants to try to swarm you. And then Slam, this one I don't recommend at all. It's way too long of an animation where you slam your chest to the floor, causing high damage and knockback, but I don't think that one is useful. Power Press, same thing, way too slow. King of Hell, it looks cool and all because you've got a fire trail that you leave behind, and it does decrease health and oxygen recovery, but I don't really find it all that useful. People can usually avoid it, and it doesn't seem to really have a huge effect on anybody. Warpath is interesting because you can, after 5 bites, you can start healing on your normal bite and your adrenaline bite. So that's a good option if you want to try to get some healing in a big, long battle. And then Charge is a really good one that does damage. You just charge forward in a line and you cause damage. That's like the old C-Rex, the old OG Rex had that. And then a really cool one is Bully. You can knock stuff off cliffs with that. Find somebody cliff camping, just use Bully to charge them and knock them off. Or you can use it to knock opponents into the water too, that have a hard time swimming, and tangle them up in the water. And since the C-Rex is a semi-aquatic, then you'll have an advantage when you're fighting them if they're not semi-aquatic. I like the knockback tail, the regular tail attack that has knockback, and then it also confuses them after 5 hits, so that's nice. Rejection's also another option. That's going to increase the cooldowns of your opponent, and it drains their sprinting stamina and their attack damage. It lowers all that. And then there's this internal damage that causes quicker hunger depletion, slows their trotting, and gives them a lower turning radius, and it can stack up to 5 times. So that's also a good option too. It just kind of depends on the situation. Balance can be good. I find that it has pretty good turning just standard, but if you want to really improve your turning and fight, if you're fighting Gigas or like PT Gigas or Karks that have much better turning, then you can use that as an option. And then there's a ton of calls. Most of these are just cosmetic. I mean, you've got the Miasma one's pretty good, especially when you're in the water. But other than that, it's not really going to do all that much. The Dupa's Rage and Blaze of Glory on the Apex Killer server are nerfed pretty good, so I think it's nice because it used to do way too much damage. So now it'll do some damage, but it's not gonna, it's a ranged attack, so it's a good way to get some damage on a ranged attack. It's not going to do massive damage, but it is something. So, and it looks cool. So if you want to do that, Hot Spit's another good one too. That is a ranged attack, and it does kind of a dot damage. And then there's Love Loogie to heal your allies, and that's for after combat, in between combat. And then there's Crust, which is a really good one to reduce your knockback, and you're immune to Bone Break, which is really good. So if you're going to be fighting Rexes, like OG Rexes, that's a really good option. So the build that I'm going to be using in most of the clips that you'll see here is going to be this one, just Bite and Face Tank, and then Ronin. I kind of just depends on the situation, but sometimes I'm using Ronin, sometimes I'm using Lone Hunter. Resilient Scales, and then probably actually not Stomp, but I use this one, Charge, along with Strong Legs, because I tend to fight near cliffs a lot, so having this ability to not be knocked back so much is really nice. With the knockback tail, so I can knock them off the cliff, but they can't knock me. And then I like to be immune to Bone Break because there's a lot of Rexes running around. And this just keeps it fairly simple. There's a charge, there's a tail attack, and there's a bite. So there's not a whole lot of combos to remember or anything like that. It's fairly straightforward. These guys, let's see here. Yeah, I mean, I'm on hyper carnivore, and the hunger and the food drains like crazy. So they're always hungry and thirsty. It's one of the downsides to these. There's tons of skin options, obviously. They're all obnoxious, so I just chose this one because I thought it looked kind of like a black, gray and black lion with a big black mane. I kind of thought it looked cool, but I kind of think they're all ugly, really. So this is just the one I chose for whatever reason. But you can see I'm Elder class. The female C-Rex on Apex Killers is an Elder class, so you get extra combat weight. It just makes you bigger and slower and tougher. But you are very slow, and that's going to be the biggest negative to the C-Rex. So this is a good example of this is kind of the build I run mostly with Ronin, Face Tank, and regular Bite, and then the knockback tail. And then I've got Trample as well, and I'll show you how I use that here. But Ronin was the key to this fight. I mean, it's so big and tanky anyway, but you need the ability to turn, and the extra armor helps when they come in and get the hits on you and the hit and runs. But the turn radius is the real key here, because you can see I'm able to pretty much keep them in front of me most of the time. Use Trample to get away from them and get into a good spot right here, and then I can also use it to catch them and slow them down so that I can bite them. But this is my real goal here, is to keep them near the cliff so that I can use my tail knockback to knock them off. And then since I have Crust, that really helps me get much more resistant to their knockback. So they do have a knockback backhand that they can use to knock me off the cliff. But because I have Crust on, I'm very resistant to knockback anyway. But they can't come in without either taking a tail and getting knocked off or getting bit. So this is a great position for the C-Rex, and this is pretty much how you have to fight with it, as like a fortress, very defensive fortress type build. You can do these short bursts, and you can see the knockback on that Trample actually kind of locks them in place for a second, just so you can get a bite or two on them before they run off. So Ronin mixed with that Trample is a really good combo for most of the things in the game that are smaller and faster than you. And that tends to be what happens, I've noticed, on the C-Rex, is that you're getting attacked by groups of stuff, whether it be Sukos or Noviana, or Torvos. It's the Allos, the groups of things like to come and try to swarm you. The Apexes and the Sub-Titans tend to stay away just because they know that they're slow enough for you to be able to catch and trade bites with, and you're heavier than every other one, so you're going to be doing more damage to them. The one exception being the DB Giga. That's a pretty good contender for the C-Rex right now, especially if it hits you with its Stomp. That'll do a lot of damage, and it can even out the odds for the DB Giga. The OG Rex also, it would be a good fight. But so Ronin wouldn't be the best for those things. I'd rather have Lone Hunter on for those bigger ones. But for the most part, you can also use the river or the lakes, water to get away from that stuff. If you happen to have Ronin on, and you see those bigger enemies, you can just stay away from them if you want to, or get yourself into a spot where you can switch out to the Lone Hunter and then go back and fight them. But this is a pretty long fight. I cut out a lot of the the running and the stalling that they were doing because they caught me over on the other side in Grand Plains, but then they ended up taking a bunch of damage and swimming across the river to go heal. So I kind of swam over there, and then it looked like they wanted to run away, so I started moving away to go back, but then they came back for another round. So that's why we kind of migrated over here, and I'm just at this point fighting them. But I'm also thinking about pulling them away from the water, because what they're doing is they're just running back into the water when I do my bursts, because I'll play defensively, but every once in a while I'll do a burst like this. See how it kind of catches them with that knockback, and you can get some pretty good bites on their back. And then you can see he just runs off into the water. So they're just going to play this cat and mouse game where they want to try to get some hits and then go run in the water and heal up, where they're a lot faster than I am in the water. So I'm just thinking about getting away from the water and pulling them away from that, so that they can't just keep doing that. Because I'm like, at this point, I'm sort of like, let's either fight or not. I'm kind of tired of them sort of picking at me and then running off. You see they just use the water there. And then I'm kind of using these boulders a little bit, hoping that maybe they'll get hung up inside these boulders that are hidden by the bushes. It's a really good thing to use sometimes, because they're looking behind them a lot when they're fighting a bigger enemy like this, and it could be that they're looking behind them and they run into the boulder, not realizing that it's there, because the last time they glanced, all they saw was a bush. At this point, we've been fighting for quite a while, actually, and you can see my health is very high. They weren't doing all that much damage to me in this fight. It was just kind of like an annoyance. They're sort of like picking at me and then running off. And back in the water they go. So I'm getting frustrated at this point, because I want to fight or not fight. This is just kind of an exercise in futility at this point. They're not going to win this fight, but they're being persistent. So I've got to try to get into a situation to force them to make a mistake, and a situation where maybe I can catch one of them and kill them, or force them to give up. So again, using the trample to sort of trap them. And then here, I saw them going over towards this cliff, so I knew if I could corral them up here, I'd force them off the cliff. They could take a lot of fall damage, which he ends up doing right here. And I knew that was pretty much all I needed. Now at this point, they're running scared. I mean, he can have little fast, short bursts of speed, a lot like a trike, and you can get some pretty good hits on him. But I asked them at this point, guys, are we done? And they were like, yeah, Whiskey, we're done. And they swam away. So it was a fun little fight. Took a little, went on a little longer than I thought, but got to give them kudos for trying. This was a funny little thing. These Kelikans came and tried, and I just killed them in one stomp. But that's an example of how you use the stomp effectively. This was the most challenging fight I had, actually, against these Noviana. They've got a heavy bite that does piercing damage, so it ignores combat weight and or armor, and it does a lot of damage. And they have this like jumping leap that they can do as well that does high damage. So 3 of them is a pretty good threat. So I immediately get to position, and I'm going to be trying to use my knockback tail to knock them off, and then try to get them to hit me in the face since I have face tank on. Now, I don't know how much damage exactly that they're taking falling off of that. They're cats, so they kind of they I think they don't take too much fall damage as it is. But it's still a good position for me because it limits their angles. And I still do have the same build face tank with Ronin and Crust. So mainly it's the Ronin and the face tank that are helping me in this one. So I start getting to under half. I need to start thinking about getting into a better spot here. They've done a lot of damage to me now, but I know also that I've done a lot of damage to them. And I'm just going to keep trying to limit their angles and dish out as much damage as I can to them, because at this health I can't afford for them to be swarming me. So now they're really slowing down. Their health's getting low too, and I do a lot of damage per bite, so they can't afford to be hitting each other or just coming in too aggressively and taking too much damage. I cut it out, but they actually ran up onto the cliff behind me and healed up a little bit. Let the combat timer go out and tried to regroup a little bit. So that tells me that they're getting low, and I'm starting to think the odds of the fight are starting to fall into my favor now. Well, they kind of went back up there to go heal again, so I made a dash for it, and I'm trying to get into a better spot. I want to get into a spot where I can either knock them off down into the river, give me some space, or get up onto a really high cliff where if I do knock them back, it'll actually cause them to take damage. And I know it's got to be a very high cliff because these guys have pretty good fall damage resistance. So I just weathered the storm until I could back up onto this really, really tall cliff here. And the other thing it's doing is that even if they don't take damage, they are jumping off that cliff, and it's causing them to have to come all the way back up and run all the way back around again. So it just gives me time to reposition. But this is the spot I really wanted to be at right here. Now I know there's a lot of trees that's going to limit their movement and get them stuck and hung up on things, so I can get some bites in. And at this point, 2 of them are off, I assume, sitting down and trying to get health or stamina, and there's really only 1 attacking at this point. So, well, there's a second one that showed up here, but eventually knock them off and kill one of them. So I'm still in favor of removing it from the primary server and just keeping it in deathmatch only, where we can kind of play around with it. But since it's here for now, I am actually enjoying it, so I will be playing it a little more. And as always, guys, I hope to see you out there in Gondua. Thanks for watching. Goodbye.